intercontinental ballistic missiles. Attempts at reconciliation with the West consistently failed, ensuring that North Korea remained comfortably ensconced on President George W. Bush's axis of evil. Despite this distinctly unpromising international image, I followed a gut curiosity and replied to ITN that, yes, I was interested and I'd like to know more. After a few initial meetings, the momentum slackened. The international situation worsened, and the idea of a North Korea travelogue looked less and less likely. Added to this, my wife was to have a knee replacement, and I needed to be at home to help her with her recuperation. I therefore decided to confine myself to another project, and one which would keep me closer to home, following up my newfound enthusiasm for the extraordinary life story of a ship called HMS Erebus, and turning it into a book. It seemed to be the right decision. The news from the Democratic People's Republic was going from bad to horrible. Kim Jong-un was threatening the world, boasting that his country had assembled an arsenal of missiles and 16 nuclear weapons to go with them. The immediate reaction of the newly elected American president, Donald J. Trump, was hardly encouraging. Calling the North Korean leader a madman, he promised that North Korea will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. "Rocket Man is on a suicide mission," Trump jeered. Kim Jong-un retaliated, calling Trump a mentally deranged dotard. The likelihood of my ever being able to film in the Hermit Kingdom was receding by the insult. My wife was relieved, and I reconciled myself to missing out on what would have been my 98th country. But ITN and Channel 5 hadn't given up. Throughout the months of belligerent name-calling, they'd kept in touch with their chief contact, an English tour operator called Nick Bonner, a man who had been organising tours to the DPRK for 25 years and who knew the country intimately. At the beginning of 2018, Bonner noted more promising signs coming out of North Korea. In his New Year's speech, Kim Jong-un, whilst warning that the entire US is within range of our nuclear weapons, had extended an unprecedented olive branch to the president of South Korea, and by implication to the world outside. As I grappled with the disappearance of HMS Erebus in the Arctic ice, things seemed to be thawing in a very different part of the world. The DPRK, so long portrayed as the secretive grump of international politics, was embarking on what used to be called a charm offensive. Not only were they sending a team to the Winter Olympics in South Korea, but, in a very canny move, they'd also decided to dispatch Kim Yo-jong, the photogenic sister of Kim Jong-un, to stand behind the robotic US Vice President Mike Pence at the said Olympics, demonstrating at a stroke that the grumps were in Washington, not Pyongyang. Almost unbelievably, within a month of the Olympics, the White House announced a possible meeting between the Supreme Leader and the American President. A few weeks later, Kim Jong-un left North Korea for the first time since he'd assumed power in 2011, taking a train to Beijing to meet the Chinese president. Fanned by the warm breeze of rapprochement, expectations were reviving. A production office was set up. Books on North Korea fell through my letterbox. Though I was still working flat out on Erebus, I was persuaded to meet up with a potential director, Neil Ferguson, whose own account of the pre-film preparations will be found as a postscript to the journal. We had to be careful. The project was on such a knife edge that any advance publicity could have killed it off. In a suitably clandestine John le Carré way, we met at tables at the backs of pubs and cafes, and always referred to North Korea as North Croydon. One stroke of luck was a 3-week hole in my Erebus production schedule, whilst my editor took a fine-tooth comb to the finished copy. Suddenly, with almost indecent haste, I was packing my bags for the flight to Beijing, assuring